Listen carefully, because this did not reach you by accident. Something has shifted. Not in a small way. Not in the soft, forgettable way people move on from passing feelings. I mean a deep shift. Quiet. Heavy. The kind that grows in silence until it can no longer stay hidden. There is someone connected to you who has been trying to outrun what they feel, and for a long time they almost convinced themselves they had succeeded. They stayed busy. They stayed distracted. They stayed behind walls that looked like control. But control can crack in one night. It can break in one moment. It can disappear the second a person realizes the one they kept at a distance may not stay within reach forever. That is where this begins. Not with peace, not with confidence, with pressure, with fear, with that sharp, sinking feeling that comes when someone understands they may have waited too long. And if you have been sensing strange energy, mixed signals, sudden silence, or an invisible pull you could not explain, stay with me, because what you are about to hear may put every piece in the right place. This person did not stop feeling. That is the part most people get wrong. It was never emptiness. It was overload. They felt too much, then handled it badly. Instead of speaking, they pulled back. Instead of being honest, they became distant. Instead of risking vulnerability, they chose the comfort of delay. And delay has a dark way of pretending to be harmless while it slowly damages everything. At first it looks small. One unsent message, one postponed talk, one more day of silence, one more excuse. But what is avoided does not disappear. It gathers weight. It waits. It sits under the surface until one night the truth comes up harder than before, and suddenly all the feelings they buried start pressing against them at once. That is the urgency around this. It is not neat. It is not noble. It is messy. It is the panic of someone who now sees what they should have seen earlier. Maybe they heard something that reminded them of you. Maybe they saw a place, a song, a time of day, and your presence came back so clearly it unsettled them. Maybe life finally became quiet enough that there was nothing left to drown the truth out. Whatever triggered it, it landed hard. And now the thought they can't escape is simple. If they keep doing nothing, they may lose you for real. That realization rarely arrives in the middle of noise. It shows up when the room is dark and the phone is still. It shows up when conversation with other people feels empty. It shows up after the day is done, when there are no more tasks to hide behind and no more distractions to hold the truth down. In those moments, they feel the absence. Not just your absence as a person, but the absence of what being close to you gave them. You made space for them without forcing them. You understood more than they explained. You noticed the small changes in them before they even named them. That kind of connection is rare, and rare things are often taken for granted until they are no longer easy to reach. That is what they are waking up to now, and this matters, so do not miss it. What they feel is not only love, it is also loss. It is also fear. It is the shock of realizing that someone who once felt available now feels distant, and maybe not because they are playing a game, but because they are finally protecting their peace. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets deeper. They are not just afraid that you changed. They are afraid you changed in a way they cannot undo. If they could speak without pride stepping in, without fear twisting every sentence, without trying to defend themselves, the truth would be much simpler than all the confusion they created. They would say they should have shown up sooner. They would say they kept assuming there would be another chance, another opening, another moment when things could be fixed with a few sincere words. They would admit they underestimated the cost of their silence. A lot of people do that. They think silence buys time. It does not. It changes trust. It changes energy. It changes how safe a bond feels. Little by little, the person who kept reaching gets tired. The one who kept hoping starts seeing reality. The one who kept holding space starts pulling their heart back to save it. That is the part this person is finally understanding. They are beginning to see that doing nothing was not neutral. It was still a choice. And choices leave marks. Choices shape endings. Choices teach people what to expect from us, and when those choices repeat, they become a pattern. This is the hard lesson sitting in front of them now. They did not lose closeness because they cared too little to notice. They lost it because they cared, but were too afraid to act, and fear kept speaking louder than truth. That is a painful thing to face. There is also guilt here, real guilt. Not the dramatic kind people perform to seem deep. The quieter kind. The one that follows a person into ordinary moments. They feel it when they remember times you needed clarity and got confusion instead. They feel it when they think of the times a small act of honesty could have changed the direction of everything, but they chose distance because distance felt safer. They thought staying guarded would protect them. In reality, it only protected them from growth while costing them something meaningful. They are seeing that now. They know there were moments when you were trying, when your patience was still open, when your care was still warm, when a real effort from them could have met you in the middle. But they stayed behind hesitation. They kept waiting for perfect timing, and perfect timing never came. That is another truth people learn too late. Readiness is not something that magically appears. It is a decision. Courage is a decision. Showing up is a decision. And while they were waiting to feel fully prepared, life kept moving. You kept changing. Your heart kept learning. Your silence kept becoming something different. If this is making sense to you, keep listening, because the next part explains why their energy feels so uneven now. They are split inside. One part wants to reach out. Another part knows that words alone may no longer be enough. That is what unsettles them most. Not only that they miss you, but that they can feel you are no longer standing in the same place emotionally. Your tone changed. Your pace changed. The way you carry yourself changed. You may still care, but the chasing has stopped. The repeating has stopped. The painful waiting has stopped. There is a new steadiness in you now, and that steadiness says more than anger ever could. Anger can still be tied to hope. Calm can mean something else entirely. Calm can mean you finally accepted what was real. Calm can mean you stopped building your emotional life around someone else's uncertainty. Calm can mean you found your center again. And to the person who once relied on your patience being endless, that change is deeply unsettling. They leaned on your softness more than they should have. They counted on your understanding more than they admitted. Somewhere inside, they assumed you would stay emotionally available even if they stayed emotionally hidden. Now they can feel that assumption breaking apart. And once that illusion breaks, fear gets louder. Because now they are not just wondering if you still care. They are wondering if they still matter to you in the same way. That question hits hard, harder than regret, harder than loneliness. Because it forces them to imagine a future where you move forward without bitterness, without drama, without needing them to explain anything at all. And that brings us to the truth many people miss when they sense someone returning energetically. Desperation is not the same as readiness. Missing someone is not the same as being able to love them well. Regret is not the same as change. This is important, very important, because when someone starts to feel your absence loudly, they may want relief from the pain of losing you, but wanting relief is not yet proof they can offer consistency, honesty, and emotional effort. Sometimes people come close because loss scares them, not because they have grown enough to sustain something real. That does not mean their feelings are fake. It means feelings alone are not enough, and you need to remember that. Hold on to that. Do not rush past it. Your heart has already paid for the lesson. You do not need to pay twice. If they come forward, what matters is not how intense they sound in one moment. What matters is whether their actions can carry the weight of what their words promise. Because bonds are not rebuilt by beautiful sentences. They are rebuilt by truth repeated over time. They are rebuilt by showing up when it is inconvenient, by being clear instead of confusing, by being steady instead of hot and cold. And somewhere deep down, they know this. That is exactly why they hesitate. They know the standard is different now. They know you are no longer moved by almosts, maybes, and emotional storms that never become real effort. Still, memories keep pressing on them. Small ones, ordinary ones. That is how real connection returns to haunt a person, not always in the dramatic scenes, but in the steady details. The way you checked on them without needing a reason. The way you noticed when something felt off. The way your care did not demand performance. The way you made space without trying to control them. These things seem simple when they are present. They feel priceless when they are gone. And now those memories are not comforting. They are exposing. Every remembered kindness forces a question they do not want to face. Why did they pull away from something that felt safe? Why did they avoid the very thing they later realized they needed? The answer is uncomfortable. Because connection with you was asking something real from them. It was asking honesty. It was asking emotional accountability. It was asking them to stop hiding behind confusion and become visible. For someone used to surviving through distance, that can feel like danger even when it is actually love. So they stepped back. They delayed. They called it caution. They called it timing. They called it not being ready. But under all of that, fear was running the whole thing. Fear of being seen. Fear of not measuring up. fear of having to become the person the moment required. And now they are living with the results of letting fear lead. What makes this even heavier is that they can feel you no longer needing what you once hoped to receive from them. That shift is powerful. You are not collapsing under their silence anymore. You are not searching every pause for hidden meaning. You are not trying to decode every mixed signal. There is strength in you now that was built the hard way. Quietly, painfully, honestly. You sat with disappointment long enough for it to teach you something. You stopped reaching where effort was not being matched. You stopped filling empty spaces with fantasy. You stopped arguing against what their behavior was showing you. That kind of growth changes the entire landscape. And the person on the other side feels it. They feel that you are no longer arranging your emotional world around their uncertainty. They feel that your self-respect has stepped forward. They feel that you may be okay, truly okay, without them. And that is where the urgency sharpens. Because if you are okay, if you are peaceful, if your heart is no longer standing at the same door, then their usual pattern loses power. They cannot depend on confusion anymore. They cannot depend on your hope anymore. They cannot count on time stretching out forever. Suddenly everything feels real. Suddenly every unsent message feels heavier. Suddenly every delayed truth feels expensive. And yes, they are feeling that now, deeply. They also see something else now. You were never asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. You were not demanding a grand performance. You were asking for consistency. You did not need them to become someone else overnight. You needed them to live in alignment with what they said they felt. That is a much simpler request than their fear made it seem. But simple does not mean easy for a person who has built their identity around avoidance. So when the moment called for courage, they chose comfort. When the bond called for clarity, they chose delay. When your heart called for something steady, they answered with uncertainty. Over time, that creates emotional exhaustion. Not only in you, but eventually in them too. Because carrying feelings without expressing them is exhausting. Living with truth while acting against it is exhausting. Pretending not to care as much as you care is exhausting. So now they sit in that tension. They want to move toward you, but they know movement requires more than longing. It requires follow-through. It requires change that can survive beyond one emotional wave. And that scares them. Because fantasy is easy. Real love is a practice. It asks for steady behavior. It asks for repair. It asks for humility. It asks for the death of old excuses. That is why they feel caught between reaching out and freezing. Their heart is pulling one way. Their habits are pulling the other. You need to hear this part clearly. Nothing here means you should stop your life and wait. Nothing here means you owe immediate forgiveness. Nothing here means you should reopen your heart just because someone finally feels the consequences of their own delay. Your power is not in reacting to their panic. Your power is in staying honest with yourself, in staying loyal to what your own experience taught you, in remembering what it cost you to arrive at your peace. If they return, they do not return to the old version of you. That version learned. That version grew. That version now sees the difference between words that soothe and actions that stay. So if there is any movement in this story, let it be real. Let it be proven. Let it breathe in daylight instead of hiding in emotional fog. Because one honest act is worth more than 10 beautiful speeches. One steady month is worth more than one intense night. One clear conversation is worth more than weeks of hints and silence. Do not forget that. If this message reached you at the right moment, then part of you already knows. The real question is not whether they feel something. The real question is whether what they feel can become something solid. And those are not the same thing. Not even close. There are moments now when they imagine picking up the phone, typing the message, saying the truth plainly, and letting the outcome be what it will be. In those moments, they picture being brave. They picture dropping the mask. They picture finally saying what should have been said long ago. But then another voice rises, a voice built from old fear. It tells them it may already be too late. It tells them you may no longer care in the same way. It tells them if they come forward now, they may face the reality they have been avoiding all along. Rejection, consequence, accountability, so they freeze again. They write and erase. They rehearse conversations that never happen. They live inside almost, and almost is a painful place to live. It keeps people emotionally busy while nothing changes in the real world. That is likely why the energy around this feels restless. Because inside them, pressure keeps building without release. They are not at peace. They are not settled. They are confronting the gap between what they feel and what they have actually done. That gap can become unbearable after enough time. It turns memory into weight. It turns silence into noise. It turns every reminder of you into a mirror they did not ask to stand in front of. Yet here they are, standing there anyway. What they are truly confronting is bigger than romance, bigger than missing you, bigger than regret alone. They are meeting themselves, maybe for the first time in a serious way. They are starting to see how much of their life has been shaped by avoidance, how often fear dressed itself up as logic, how many times they called something not the right moment, when the truth was that they did not want to risk being known fully. This is why your absence hits at a deeper level than they expected. Because losing your presence does not only mean losing a person, it means losing the reflection you held up to them. You reflected depth. You reflected sincerity. You reflected the kind of emotional courage they were not yet practicing. And when that mirror is no longer there in the same way, the lesson becomes harder to escape. They feel what is missing, yes, but they also feel what that missing says about them. That is a different kind of pain. It is not just heartbreak, it is self-recognition. It is seeing that they may have damaged something meaningful because they refused to become honest when honesty mattered. Those realizations do not pass quickly. They sit, they echo, they reshape people, or at least they can if the person chooses to let them. And this is where the story becomes important for you, not just for them. Because when someone is waking up late, it can create a strong pull. Old energy can stir. Old questions can return. You may feel the urge to look back and wonder what could still happen. That is human. But be careful with nostalgia. Nostalgia remembers feeling better than behavior. It remembers hope better than confusion. It softens what actually hurt. So if they do appear, if they do speak, if they do try to reopen what was left hanging, listen with your full heart, but also with your full wisdom. Let your memory include the silence. Let your memory include the imbalance. Let your memory include how long you waited for what should have been freely given. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. It means letting truth stay truth even when emotion starts moving again. Because sometimes a person's late awakening is real, but still late. Sometimes the lesson changes them, but not in time for the bond they neglected. Sometimes closure does not arrive through reunion. Sometimes it arrives through seeing clearly that your love was real, your effort was real, and your decision to step back was necessary. That too is a sacred kind of ending. And sometimes, believe it or not, it becomes the beginning of your strongest season. They know now that if they ever approach you again, carelessness will not work. Half effort will not work. Charm will not work. Vague emotion will not work. You are no longer standing where easy access lives. You are standing where truth must earn its place. That changes everything. It raises the stakes. It forces honesty. And honesty is hard for someone who spent a long time protected by distance. They may want to return, but returning in a meaningful way would ask them to leave old patterns behind, not just feel sorry for them. It would ask them to choose transparency over control, effort over fantasy, stability over impulse. That is a real transformation, and real transformation is slow. It is uncomfortable. It strips away image and leaves only character. So yes, they may be thinking about you more than ever. Yes, they may feel the door closing. Yes, they may be afraid. But fear alone does not create the future. Choice does. Repetition does. Character does. This is the difference between a wave of emotion and an actual turning point. And somewhere inside, they know they are standing at that edge now. The question is whether they will keep circling the truth or finally step into it. That part is still unwritten. Meanwhile, your path is becoming clearer, not because everything stopped hurting overnight, but because you stopped betraying yourself to keep hope alive. That matters. More than you know, you chose dignity over chasing. You chose peace over emotional chaos. You chose to stop forcing meaning into silence. That is not weakness. That is maturity. That is self-respect returning to its rightful place. And when a person reaches that place, their energy changes in a way others can feel immediately. It becomes harder to manipulate, harder to confuse, harder to keep hanging in the in-between. You start valuing your own nervous system, your own sleep, your own peace of mind. You stop calling suffering love. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop handing out endless understanding to people who use it as a cushion while giving little back. That shift is powerful. It can feel quiet from the outside, but it shakes the people who benefited from your old softness without meeting it properly. So if you have changed, if you feel stronger, if you notice your heart no longer rushing to rescue every unfinished connection, trust that. That is not you becoming closed. That is you becoming rooted. And rooted people do not move just because someone else finally feels the storm they created. In the end, what matters most is simple. If something real is meant to happen from here, it will need truth, not mystery, not spiritual guessing, not signs without action. Truth. It will need accountability that does not defend itself. It will need effort that continues after the emotion settles. It will need patience from both sides, but not the old kind of patience where one person carries the entire weight while the other hides. It will need a new foundation, and if that foundation never appears, then let that speak too. Absence is information. Delay is information. Repeated hesitation is information. You do not have to keep translating silence into hidden love just to avoid the pain of accepting what is plain. Sometimes the deepest act of love is not waiting longer. It is choosing yourself clearly. So if they are feeling the loss, let them feel it. If they are learning, let them learn. If they are changing, time will show it. And if they are not, time will show that too. Your job is not to force the lesson for them. Your job is to remain honest with your own heart. Watch what is done, not only what is felt. Watch what stays, not only what appears. And if this found you at the exact moment you needed it, then maybe you already know the final truth. The question was never whether your absence would affect them. The question is whether anything real, steady and worthy can finally rise in the place where silence once stood.